Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Turnup. We are so excited to be back. There are so many world events going on right now. It's almost hard to keep up, and it almost feels like it's on purpose. So we're going to talk about Iran today and the potential collapse of that regime and all the effects that's going to have. We're going to talk about, is the United States actually going to take Greenland? Will Europe do anything about it? And then we also have to touch on Venezuela, give an update on that, because it's kind of falling to the back of the news now because of Iceland, or because of Greenland, and because of Iran. And then, of course, we have to talk about what's going on in Minnesota with ICE, as it is maybe arguably one of the current biggest domestic issues in the United States. So we got a great episode lined up. We are so excited to get into it. CK, what are your opening thoughts?
DOJ has missed 2 deadlines to release the Epstein files, and they have just filed a motion to block the appointment of an independent monitor to release the Epstein files. Most transparent presidency ever, I thought. Not really. So same story, different day.
That's fair. That's fair. You know, Bill Clinton didn't show up to his hearing for the Epstein files.
It's like they're all guilty.
It's almost like it's all corrupt. BT, opening comments, go for it.
MR, CK, thank you. I'm excited for a fantastic football weekend. Please let me know if I'm not loud enough. I'm trying a new microphone system that I'm super stoked about, officially being on a pod.
Crushing it.
almost full time now, so really excited to be here. Thanks again, and should be a great football and basketball and insert the things weekend to keep us distracted from the Epstein files. So super stoked.
Isn't that the truth? All right, let's jump right into it and let's talk about Iran, which is having some of the biggest massive nationwide protests that it's had in years. And it's continuing to erupt in late December into January now, and it'll probably go into February if the whole thing doesn't end in one way or another. But it really has to do with economic hardship and political repression. So security forces have responded with a brutal crackdown that has killed thousands of demonstrators. There's some reports out there that are saying over 12,000 Iranian citizens have been killed by security forces. And this has also led to widespread arrests and almost a total internet blackout. You have Elon Musk hopping on, X saying like, hey, I'm going to give them Starlink because the government shut everything down within the country. And this has triggered strong criticism from human rights activist groups and foreign governments, including the United States. Internationally, though, world powers like the United Nations have expressed alarm and urged restraint and respect for human rights, while the U.S. itself is basically saying, hey, are we going to go in and start bombing them? So, CK, I'm going to turn it over to you first. And there's a lot going on with this, and I'll let you take it away however you want. But is there an actual chance that the Iranian regime is going to collapse? And if they do, what does that look like? How does it start impacting the world power and dynamics?
Yeah, I think with all of revolutions or would-be revolutions, there's always a tipping point. And it seems like after that tipping point, there isn't going back. You can't shut it down because the more people you kill, the more people you arrest, the more people you radicalize. And it seems to me like we're past the tipping point. It seems very Arab Springy, or name your revolution. Indonesia had a revolution recently.
Nepal.
Seems like the people are fed up, and there's only one way this ends, and it's with regime change. Whether that's good or not, I don't know. Look at the Arab Spring. How many of those nations are better off now than they were back then? The case could be made that they're about the same. So is it going to fix things? I don't know. Will there be regime change? I would put my money on yes. Is America, Israel, and other nations involved in this? Like, is this grassroots or is this more AstroTurf? It's definitely a little bit of both.
Sure. Now, do you think if there is a regime change that it would kind of be like pre-Green Revolution, so pre-1970s Iran, where it was pretty westernized? Or do you think that they're just going to go on with a different type of Islamic leader? Because they're very...
So we've had this conversation before. The problem with Iran and a lot of the countries in the Middle East is they're pawns for the world powers, right?
Sure.
Iran is a pawn for China and also like an adversary to the U.S. And when they're used like pawns, they hardly ever just recover because there's no they're in this constant state of being used by the powers of the world. And so
Sure.
they're in this constant state of war. And then when you're in a constant state of war, who rises to power in your country is a war chief. So I don't see them just, regime change and magically they're South Korea after the Korean War. I just don't think it will happen.
Yeah, I think we talked about it in the last pod, right? And like, what's the opportunity when regime change, like we were saying for Venezuela, where, hey, is this going to be a South Korea, a Japan, a Germany, or is this going to be an Afghanistan, another Vietnam? Well, Vietnam actually turned out well. I think the big thing is nothing's going to happen quickly, and it's going to take years and decades for Iran to work itself out. I wouldn't say necessarily they are a pawn. I would just say they're a bigger fish. Now, they're not the biggest. So, like, if you were to break things in tiers, they would definitely be in the tier 2 realm where they're still very dependent on China and Russia, but they're also massive in funding terrorist organizations throughout the world. And so I think what you're going to see is you're going to see terrorist organizations not getting the supplies that they need, not getting the funding they need, the weapons that they need. And then I also think that this is arguably the biggest blow to Russia this decade. If you think about it, you look at Russia's allies, right? Syria fell. That was one of their closest allies, and they used a port in Syria to have access to the Mediterranean. You look at Iran. If Iran falls, Russia loses another ally, and they're still caught in this war in Ukraine that they cannot get out of and they cannot win. And I think Russia is the biggest loser in this, and I think the Iranian people, except for those that have died, could potentially be the biggest winner.
But let's talk this through, MR, BG. Because Iran has regime change, and then what? Israel and them are suddenly friends?
No, and
no chance, right?
Sure.
And so if Israel is still playing their games, which sure they're not Iran, but they are playing games, right? They're using Iran, and there's hostilities that way. So who's going to rise to power? It's going to be someone that fights back. It will be. It just will be. So I just see more of the same happening.
Okay. What do you think on that, BG?
Yeah, I don't think that there's really a lot of capability for the Shah to retake power unless there's direct intervention from the rest of the Western world. So whether you define that as the Israelis or the United States or whomever else, even the rest of the Gulf Cooperation Council, right, the GCC, if you brought anybody in from that perspective, I don't think it's a fast turnover. I mean, look at your closest country with respect to potentially being able to change the political environment would be like Iraq, and Iraq has completely fallen out of favor, even with us following the Iraq-Afghanistan war. So.
But here's the thing, though. Iran was democracy prior to the Islamic Revolution. Like it was where Afghanistan wasn't and Iraq wasn't. So I think
you call it the Islamic Revolution. I call it prior to Cold War politicking.
I mean, it was literally. I mean, what's it called?
They were hand in hand, but what caused the other? I would argue that that us and Russia. Trying to create buffer zones and bastions of communism or democracy everywhere caused the Islamic Revolution, caused all of these things.
Well, if you want to look at a cause, you can blame the British more than anybody else because Iran was a democratic nation. They wanted to nationalize their oil, and Britain said, no. They ousted them, and the country slowly fell out. But like Persians are incredibly intelligent people, overall, they understand that there's still a lot of people living there. A lot have fled to the United States as well, where they're like, hey, we left because of this regime. There's still a lot of people there that know what democracy is. So I think that there's a higher probability for democracy. Now, I don't think it'll be fast, and I don't think it'll be clean. Most of the time, it's not. If you look at the United States, we had a Revolutionary War, then we had a Civil War, we had segregation, we had all these terrible things. But we got there, and I think Iran can get there. I think they can get there more quickly. The problem to me is who is going to be their ally in this new world. Because you're right, Israel's going to hate them, and Israel and the United States, that relationship. Is Russia still going to back a democratic Iran?
No,
maybe, probably not. Well, they might have to. They may not want to. They may have to. What's China in this? Are they going to influence? And I think it's going to be all these world powers are going to be pulling Iran apart, trying to gain favor and influence. And I think that is going to be the hardest part for Iran.
So you're saying that they're pawns in a game played by Russia, China, U.S.
Yeah, but they're not the smallest pawns. They may not even be a pawn.
Okay.
They're like a knight. They're not a king or a queen on the chessboard. They may be a knight where they still like are a country that is strong and that has survived hardship and sanctions. But BG, do you want to touch on why Iran is in this predicament, how we got there, and maybe that can help clarify where we think this can end up?
Yeah, sure. I can take that, Emra. So, over years of sanctions, Iran has continued to fall out of favor, right? So we sanction their oil, sanction their financial systems, sanction their individual owners of financial currency all over the world. And so these guys have had to effectively park capital only with China, Russia, and India, and then maybe a couple other minor players in like Africa, right? So what has happened specifically for this event, what caused these massive protests around the country that I haven't really seen reported in the news anywhere, is the Andaya Bank, which is one of the largest banks in Iran, actually collapsed 4 days before the protest started. They had $5 billion in loans that were non-collateralized, so they didn't have any assets to back them across the country from small businesses and homes. And what the government did to ensure that this didn't show up anywhere in the news cycle was they printed a ton of money to cover the loss, and then they rolled the bank into a state-owned bank. And so anytime you have a state-owned bank, it makes it difficult because generally speaking, the government is not as efficient at running a bank as a normal bank would be. And so in this case, it caused massive financial economic turmoil across the country to the extent that the real spiraled to zero and then barely bounced out of zero in the last 4 days. And then upon further research, we've identified, at least from the U.S. Federal Reserve perspective and the Treasury perspective, there are a minimum of 5 other banks in Iran that are showing either signs of significant financial stress or are close to default, which means that this could continue to have economic implications across the country for a long period of time. And so what does that mean for them long term? Realistically, they'd have to redo their entire financial system. And at this point, I don't think the IRGC and Kamani and anyone else in the Islamic side of the government of this country knows how to fix it. And frankly, they're not going to, right? That's why you started to see them last week in the last 4 days start moving capital out of Iran and preparing for a fall of the regime. And they moved everything to Doha and UAE. So they're looking at Qatar and UAE as a place to get out. The other things I think are interesting, not necessarily from the Iranian perspective, but just so we're all on the same page here. The HRANA, so the Human Rights Organization of the UN, has verified at this point a minimum of 3,000 deaths. We think it's closer to 12,000. They've identified at least 18,000 protesters have been arrested and put in jail. And then something interesting that I've only found on one source thus far was the Kurdistan Freedom Party. The Kurdistan Freedom Party, that's generally known only in Iraq and a little bit of Syria, took over the IRGC headquarters in Kermanshah. So that's closer to the Baghdad area.
So what you're basically saying is that the entire financial system in Iran is going to collapse, which will bring significant hardship throughout the entire country.
It effectively already has, but yes, it could get worse. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're saying that to me, it sounds like there is little to no chance that the current regime stays in power, especially when you kill that many of your own people and there's just no economic structure whatsoever. How can the Iranian government survive this?
But to CK's point, that's exactly the point, right? There's no, unlike a power vacuum where these guys come out, who comes in, there's no who comes in. It's just them. Realistically, the only way that those people leave is if you kill.
Someone comes in. Someone always comes in. That once they're out, there is a vacuum.
From their perspective, though, the IRGC still controls the power, so it's just going to be the IRGC.
Yeah, but there's been so many revolutions. You can point to the American Revolution or the French Revolution or any of them where they overthrow the government. So you just need mass people just continuing to protest. And at some point, the people are going to fight back and start, or I don't know, could break into a civil war.
Someone will come in if the regime is overthrown. They won't just replace him with another regime. It will be a replacement. And you bet your ass that the U.S.,
I was going
Russia,
to say, yeah.
China will be heavily influencing who comes in.
All right, so let's play. Yeah, go for it, BJ.
I was just gonna say that's why I don't think it's gonna be a major change.
So
I think it's just someone else from the rest of the IRGC side.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a major change and where it will no longer be a religiously led authoritarian regime. I cannot remember what's that called, theology. I don't know. There's some name that describes what type of government rule that is. I cannot.
Theocracy.
That. Thank you. There we go. So yeah. So I think it's very plausible that United States, Russia, China are going to start importing weapons to each side. I think it's possible we see a Syria type of level civil war, which would be terrible for the Iranian people overall, and probably would be worst case. Maybe best case for Israel, worst case for the Iranian people and overall stability in that region, as you're essentially going to have all the way from Iraq to Afghanistan, that entire middle area, just absolute sheer chaos, which I don't think benefits anybody outside Israel.
Yeah, you said they'd probably start importing weapons. I would bet
they haven't already.
Yeah, exactly. There's no way they haven't already. This is full fledged, and every country's State Department's getting involved in any way they can with plausible deniability.
Yeah. All right, so let's wrap this one up before we move to Greenland. CK, you'll go first. I want to hear your predictive thoughts, how you think what's going to happen in the coming weeks, months, and overall.
Yeah, like I said, we're past the tipping point, in my opinion. But I think we keep treating every single Middle East country like 19 Germany. And so what are you going to get after 1990 Germany? After a decade, you're going to get someone else that's probably worse than the guy you had before.
Hey, Jake?
It's tough to say, in my opinion. I think the current president of the United States wants to take strike action. And I think he's still leaning towards taking strike action, evidenced by the fact that he moved the Lincoln Carrier Strike Group out of the South China Sea to the Middle East and will be there by the end of the week.
What would he strike, though? And when or why would he strike?
So this is a great point that we didn't bring up, is that, everyone postulates what happens if Kim Jong-un gets terminal cancer and just starts pressing buttons. This is kind of the same scenario. That's worst case scenario here. If this regime is going down, do they start pressing the red buttons and start flying, sending massive amounts of TBMs toward Israel, sending massive amounts of drones toward Israel and U.S. bases in the area? Because why not? I'm going down anyway. So if I'm on the Titanic going down, I'm taking as much down with me as I can. That's why we have carrier strike groups, because this could get out of hand. And after the 12-day war, we've already expended a lot of interceptors.
Yes, I'm sure it's possible, but I think it's unlikely. That regime is already making exit plans. If they say F the world and try and end Israel, they are not safe in China or Russia. They can basically guarantee they will be hunted to the ends of the world, and then Russia are trying to get sanctioned to Timbuktu until they give them up. There's a difference of how you exit power. Yeah, you can say F the world, but then you are going to pay that price. And I don't think Russia or China wants to harbor people that level of the nation. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think the United States is moving in there, just like when Syria fell, like when Bashar al-Assad fell, Israel went in and bombed all the chemical factories. I think the United States will do that with everything that they've identified as either weapons manufacturing for bombs, missiles, or nukes, and they're going to level all of that. So whatever regime takes over, or it just becomes a terrorist hub, whatever, then they won't have access to those type of capabilities.
It just has to happen once, though. Like, to say, it hasn't happened, it's a very shaky situation, and one wrong move and, bombs are bursting. And also, I think our foreign policy in the Middle East has not helped. You look at Gaddafi, like he denuclearized, he demissiles, and then what do? We fund and promote a coup, and he ends up getting hung in the town square. So, like, if I'm a leader in the Middle East, I say, like, okay, if I go out peacefully without doing this, what's the consequence? They're still going to kill me.
Well, no. I think there's a total difference. Yeah, if they stayed in Iran, absolutely. that if they run to Russia, China, like Edward Snowden ran to Russia, Bashar al-Assad ran to Russia, they now have this protectorate over them where we're not going to go into Russia and do drone strikes or send in the SEALs or Delta Force into Russia to kill them. That is.
But what use does Russia and China have to these guys, and what do they owe them if they're not in power anymore?
That's tough. Maybe one day they'll move to power. I don't know. Remember, like when World War I broke out and a bunch of the European leaders like fled to different countries in exile or whatever.
You know what I would do if I was China? I'd say,
do?
You should press the big red button.
Do you think they hate Israel that much? Because they don't have the capabilities to reach America.
It's just, it doesn't matter if they hate or like or whatever. It's like, let's do as much damage as you can on your way out without us having to do it. That's what China wants. They want us involved and hurt and everything else without them being involved at all, so they can just continue to buy time.
Yeah. All right. I can buy that. BG, closing statements on this before we transition to Greenland?
Similar perspective, MR. I think that if the U.S. does strike, we hit as many of the IRGC sites we can as possible, understanding that the problem is Iran is extremely mountainous, just like Afghanistan. Yep. So the majority of the country is above 1,500 feet, 6,500 feet in certain areas. And so hitting those massive IRGC sites and TBM launch sites is going to be impossible, even with bunker busters, right? It's just going to be a total mess. And interestingly enough, to CK's point, David Barrera, I think is how you say his name, the Mossad chief, landed in the United States on Wednesday. So I'm curious to see what kind of deals the Israelis start making to try to minimize some sort of strike.
Interesting.
Or potential damage to the Israeli state. You know.
No. Appreciate both thoughts. Well, I think the regime's going to fall. I think some form of democracy will somewhat happen, and there's just a struggle and fight for power. But let's transition over to Greenland, which is, I guess, the other biggest thing going on in the world right now. So, for those of you that don't know, which I doubt, Greenland is a semi-autonomous Danish territory with strategic Arctic locations and significant mineral potential, and has suddenly, again, become a major international flashpoint for U.S. President Donald Trump's renewed aggression efforts to acquire control of the island. CK, I think one of the first episodes we talked about Greenland, so this is actually nothing new for Trump. He's been very vocal since day one, I think from his previous presidency, that he wants Greenland, whether it's through aggression or through selling. And so the move, or I should say the renewed effort, has sparked diplomatic tensions with NATO and EU countries who strongly reject any transfer of sovereignty and view Greenland's ownership as a red line for international law and alliance unity. Thousands of Greenlanders have marched in their capital protesting that Greenland is not for sale, while Danish and Greenlandic leaders have reaffirmed allegiance to Denmark and NATO explicitly rejecting U.S. takeover proposals, and several European nations have already deployed troops, not a lot, to participate in defense exercises in Greenland as a show of support for its sovereignty. So there's a lot to unpack over here. And a lot of Americans are saying, why do we really need Greenland? We can do whatever we want in the country anyway. We have military bases there. We're sure we can get some businesses to start mining the minerals. Do we really need to own it? And then what is NATO really going to do? What is Denmark really going to do? And is Denmark really actually care about Greenland? Except for right now, it's not like they actually own them. It's not like it's actually a part of, their country. So, BG, I'll open up with you, man. What's your take on everything going on in Greenland?
Greenland, just another part of Denmark.
Okay, so you get people leave.
No, I think so. Yes, as you see ice caps start to melt and you see more activity in the Arctic Circle for Russia and China, Greenland becomes more and more significant, and it's because there are so many places on Greenland where we would need to build defensive capabilities in the event of some sort of attack from Russia and China. I think DJT's perspective, I think he's more looking at this from a mineral rights and economics perspective, because there's a lot of land in Greenland that has not been looked at yet. You got to remember the island's got less than 50,000 or just
I think
60,000 people.
I think they have like 54,000 people in the entire country.
Crazy small number.
57.
Yeah, crazy small number of people for the size of land. I mean, it's effectively a quarter, or if not a third, the size of Canada. Massive amount of land, right? And they don't have the people. Denmark doesn't really pour the money into the country because in 2009, Denmark passed the Greenland Self-Government Act. So it made it so that the Greenlanders were responsible for their own government taxation, revenue parsing, and economics. And at this point, they haven't had any significant investment in terms
Yep.
of capital, right, in the country. So I think over time you could see a large change, specifically on oil and refining side, as well as mineral rights side. But for us right now, the reason why it's significant, we already have a base there. It used to be called Thule. It was a massive radar station for our homeland defense system. It's now called Pitafik. That was a political change based on who had originally lived there instead of calling it Thule today. So we still have a massive radar site. I think NATO sent 16 to 20 total members to defend Greenland from U.S. activity. Well, fun fact, we already have 500 folks just at the space base. So, and that doesn't encompass any other naval stations we have on Greenland that aren't even talked about in the news. So, what I think happens with Greenland long term, I think the case can be made that it should be some sort of U.S. control if we're not just going to use the current treaty language that we already have in place, which we kind of do what we want right now as it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really, the only positive to quote unquote owning the land would be being able to do whatever we want with it past that point. So maybe if Greenland or Denmark is not privy to us putting more surveillance sites up, maybe that's something we could do now.
Yep. Okay. So, yeah. All right. So, CK, is this a nothing burger where Donald Trump is just pounding his chest and getting the news riled up to either distract or to feel the vibe of the world? Are we going to buy Greenland, or are we going to invade it? Those are pretty much the three issues on the table, right? Or three options on the table, right?
Yeah, I think it was a nothing burger until we removed the president of Venezuela in the middle of the night, and everyone said, "Oh, wait, this might be something he would do."
Yep.
So, I mean, you're right. We either buy it, which I think they're going to say not for sale. Which we've talked about this. I think that's crazy. $114 billion would make every single man, woman, and child in Greenland a $2 millionaire.
Yeah. Like,
I would do it.
Do yeah. Why would you not?
Yeah. Shit. I'd do it. And they get to vote. Like, it's not Denmark's really choice. If they vote, we're going to be part of the U.S. Then that is, I mean, long term, a one-time payment of $100 billion. It's what we call budget dust. We
call it Somali fraud.
Yeah. I know. It would get you a lot of daycares in Greenland.
Nice.
So why? I don't think they will, but I think that would be obvious. Now, will Trump take it? He could. It runs the risk of him taking it. He's going to have to fight the courts because it's going to go to the courts. People will say that's unconstitutional. And then on top of that, if he loses an election in 2 years, they're definitely going to give it back. And we'll probably have spent over $100 billion taking it, maintaining it, and yada yada, just to.
So
get
he
it
would
back
need congressional and Senate approval before we actually buy it or anything. Like, he can't just do a presidential executive order to buy Greenland. How did Thomas Jefferson buy Louisiana Purchase? Did he need Senate and congressional approval?
I think they control the purse, right?
I think they were involved.
But with the way this presidency is gone, though, he does what he wants, and he asks for approval later, and no one can really tell him otherwise because the Republicans are too scared, even if they disagree, and the Democrats are a minority, so no one really tells him otherwise. I think he could probably take it if he wanted to and just make it happen. But like I said, if he lost an election in 2 years, they would give it back and it would be fine. He'd need J.D. Vance. They would need probably 10 more years of Republican control before it was
to solidify it.
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying. Again, if I was a Greenlandic citizen, I'm like, I can get United States protection, all the businesses coming in, tourism coming in, and I get $1 million or $2 million out of it. You're kind of insane not to do that. Like, it would be such a win for Greenlandic people that it would be absolutely life-changing. Unless they just want to stay incredibly remote and want no change in their life whatsoever. Which, hey, that may be the case.
NATO's not going to do anything, though. Like,
That's the next thing. NATO
The
won't do
United States is the NATO. That's it.
exactly. So when you say, I think the Denmark president or prime minister was like, this will end NATO, it's like, no, it won't. You think Poland is going to exit NATO and break up its alliance with the United States over Greenland? You think Germany at the end of the day is going to do that? You think Sweden with Russia on its border is going to do that? Not a chance.
Who are the big losers if NATO gets dissolved? Not the United States. We're isolationists in the middle. We have two oceans, one on each side. Europe, with Russia on their doorstep, loses. It's like, okay, you don't threaten me with a good time.
What happens if Ukraine doesn't get all the weapons that it's getting, right? What if the United States really pulls out from Ukraine? Russia's going to steamroll right through, and before you know it, they're going to be in Poland. But the United States and Poland have such a great relationship. I think the United States would be there for Poland no matter what.
But even then, the United States would probably, especially under Trump, just start a quasi-NATO with all the Trump like-minded countries, Hungary, Poland, maybe Italy.
Yep.
And then just say, bye Britain, bye France, bye whomever.
Yep. Denmark, obviously, yeah.
And who loses? All of those countries, because they're the ones not contributing to a military.
Exactly. And so I don't think it would impact NATO whatsoever. I don't think they would deploy troops. But the problem is, like, if you're saying, hey, the United States is going to forcibly take Greenland, there's nothing to conquer, right? There's no capital city you have to take. There's no military base you need to defeat.
There's no fight.
There is no fight. Like, they could just show up one day. To put it this way, the United States theoretically could do whatever they want to Greenland right now, except, I guess, tax its citizens. But whatever they want to do, whatever they want to mine, whatever they can, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if it's really worth it. Why I think it'll be a nothing burger, because the United States can do whatever it wants to Greenland right now. There's nobody or nothing stopping them. And if that's a compromise, drill where you want, mine what you want.
I don't think we can do that, though.
Maybe that's a compromise then.
Yeah.
Put as many military bases as you want, throw a naval shipyard up there, whatever. You do it, that's fine. I think that's most likely what's going to happen. I'm surprised we haven't seen that yet, but maybe Trump's just going as hard as he possibly can.
I think it's a function, because I was trying to look up the treaty that we signed with the Danish back in 1951.
Okay.
It was the original intent was because of World War II, because the Danish were invaded, right, by the Germans, and then ultimately by the USSR, and they said, hey, we don't want these people here, and so we said, okay, they can leave.
The USSR invaded Denmark?
Not necessarily invaded, but they had the capability to keep the territory if they wanted to, right? And then ultimately we decided against that. Interestingly enough, with that treaty, it does require NATO authorization. So we can't just explicitly build exactly what we want whenever we want. So there's a little bit of a limitation, and you and I both know that NATO is exceptionally political, so it's probably very cumbersome to get stuff passed. And to CK's point earlier about the Louisiana Purchase, yes, it did require congressional approval. And ironically enough, actually during the purchase, the original intent was for us to only purchase Louisiana and New Orleans, and then ultimately ended up with everything all the way up to Montana.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I
think there's some, with Golden Dome now, there's a lot of repercussions. Like if you can have air defense to look over the Arctic Circle.
The poles, yeah.
That helps a lot. And that's probably why it keeps resurfacing. The NDA just got approved, and
I think the major concerns right now are, so it's the Russia buildup, but it's also China. China has started doing more military activity in the area. Further, if it's anything like what they're doing with South America, they sign a treaty with you, and then what they did to Peru was they've actually started fishing in Peruvian waters, and they're decreasing the amount of money that Peruvian fishing companies, commercial and private, are being able to rein in every year.
Which makes you more dependent on China, which
exactly
the cycle keeps going and going.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a similar, and Russia and China are already in each other's pockets for basically everything. At this point, it would be as an adversarial move against the rest of NATO because Sweden and Finland joined the alliance.
Interesting. Another thing we haven't talked a lot about too, like Alberta's going to vote on in October whether they leave Canada or not. Dude, that would be crazy. Can you imagine in 2026, the United States gets Venezuela, Greenland, and Alberta? Like, what are you doing? Playing a game of Risk? That would be insane. All right, we got 2 more topics. We're going to hit on them a little quicker. We won't dive as deep in them because we've already spoke about Venezuela last episode, but we want to give a little bit of an update on what's going on. So, BG, can you want to hit first on the Venezuelan update?
Yeah, so we have seized a 6 oil tanker in the Caribbean Sea, and we're continuing to look for other oil tankers in the area with our naval and Coast Guard assets. Anything that's Russian flagged, we're still seizing because we want to control how the oil money is flowing. The current acting president of Venezuela has requested that all money transfers flow through the Venezuelan central bank. That's so that they can control the money.
Yep.
I don't think we're going to let that happen. In the diplomatic front side, we've only had one quote unquote diplomat land in Venezuela. And ironically, it wasn't anyone from the State Department or anyone from an actual diplomatic status. It was the director of the CIA,
Wild.
which makes me question what the motives of the United States now actually are in Venezuela. And in the context,
We're questioning them before.
Yeah.
We're doing nefarious things around the world. No,
Not possible.
Hey, like I said last time, this was all about protecting American citizens from drug flow.
truth, justice, and the American way.
Something like that.
Yeah, I'd have to look up if there was anything else significant that's happened in the last couple weeks. I'll let CK talk the point about the opposition party leader.
Yeah.
Maria,
CK, what's your take on this?
Yeah,
Maria Corina Machado, who is trying to take power in Venezuela, using this as an opportunity. There were rumors that Trump is not backing her because she won the Nobel Peace Prize and over him. So she flew to the White House and presented him with her Nobel Peace Prize, and as a olive branch, desperately pandering to Trump's ego, which, to be fair, is about the best play you can do. Is just pander to that ego. And will it work? It
Maybe.
might.
Maybe. Yeah. So I think it's fair to say that today, a week later, essentially, Venezuela is still running as a sovereign nation, and I haven't seen anything that says the country is imploding, and I haven't seen anything where the citizens are greatly upset. Everything you see on the news is that they're so happy, is great. And it's only been a week, but so far, a weekend, it seems like so far it's more positive than negative for the Venezuelan people. So let's jump in. CK, you don't think so? A weekend?
No.
What?
No.
What
you haven't seen the news story doesn't mean it's not like. I mean, your disclaimer that it's only been a week is the most important part of that. So nothing has changed because no time has passed.
We can only report in the moment that we're in. I'm just saying a week so far, the country hasn't imploded, which is a fair statement where some people thought it would.
I wouldn't say that it seems that this is only good things are happening. It seems like we need more time.
I said it seems it's more positive than negative a weekend.
Okay.
To this point.
Don't be a hater. Yeah, to a weekend. Chill. It's not that big of a statement.
Can I talk economics for Venezuela real quick? I just had a thing I remembered.
Go for it. Then we'll transfer over to ice.
From energy perspective, super cool. Chevron, Citgo, and Exxon, I think, did a study with the U.S. Energy Secretary, and they think that they could increase crude production out of Venezuela by 50% by the end of this year. So that's significant because Venezuelan oil, to CK's point, I think the last time we talked about this, Venezuelan oil is the most difficult to pull out of the earth because it is the thickest crude oil on the earth.
Yep.
And we hold the best refining capabilities on the planet for that specific type of oil, and that's why it's so significant. Because the Russians and Chinese, while they do have refining capacity, significant refining capacity, they don't have the type of capacity that we have specifically on the Texas Gulf Coast as well as Louisiana.
Weekend seems more positive than negative. All right.
A week? It's been 6 days since the Rams' last football game, and they're still in the playoffs. Nothing's changed.
It's fantastic.
They haven't played another game.
and they'll play tomorrow, and they'll beat the fraudulent Bears. But we'll save that for the end. All right, so jumping in to, well, let's just take a moment and be thankful we're not Jacksonville fans. So moving into
Everybody hates on the Jags, okay? Rude.
It's easy. It's because it's easy to do. So jumping into our last topic with ICE, Minnesota, I do think we're going to need our own episode to talk about this because Americans are incredibly decisive or divided, I should say, on how they feel about ICE and their opinions on what's happening in Minnesota. And so we can look at ICE as like, hey, this is good immigration that has now gone out of control, where they've no longer following what it was started for. You can look at this and be like, is this the beginning of SS troops, that just were loyal to the president? You could take that angle. And then you could be like, are they overstepping their boundaries? Should they wear uniforms? Should they identify themselves just like police officers do and whatnot? And how much power do they have? Well, when we look at Minnesota right now, the biggest story going on is the woman that was shot by an ICE agent. The video circulating, everybody, depending on if you're left or right, pretty much determines how you interpret that video. Regardless of what side you're on, she did press on the gas pedal. The vehicle, regardless if she was turning away or not, did clip the ICE agent. Now, whether you agree that he should use lethal force or not, probably depends if you're on the left side or right side. He used lethal force, shot, killed the driver, and then there have been protests. Now you have the mayor of Minnesota basically saying that they're going to fight back against ICE and almost basically saying, hey, we're not going to stand for the federal government interfering in our state. We will fight back. And you have Donald Trump basically saying what act is he going to put in? The Insurrection Act, I think he said he's going to think about using, which would bring National Guard troops in and all that. And you can very, very quickly find ourselves in a wild, wild scenario where you're having some federal versus state power going on right now. So, CK, what are your overall thoughts on this? And knowing that in the next episode or two, we'll really deep dive how much power ICE has and if it's still a good thing or if it ever was a good thing.
Too much power in the government is always a bad thing. He absolutely did use lethal force when he should have, in my opinion. I mean, she was protesting. He didn't need to shoot her in the face. I think it's just ridiculous where he could have just stepped over. I think lethal force should always be used, as a last resort. It wasn't a last resort. It just wasn't. She was going like 5 miles an hour. Is there a roll in ice? Did the last, did the Biden presidency let way too many immigrants over the border? Yeah, the faucet was open. That needs to be corrected. But this isn't the way to do it. I just don't think so. And ICE is definitely undertrained. They're taking volunteers to sign up. They're giving them big bonuses, and then apparently their training window is 47 days. And it's literally only 47 days because he's the 47th president. So we're not actually looking at what training they need. The whole thing is politicized. And then, so I mean, obviously, who's going to sign up for Trump's ICE? It's going to be people who are like MAGA to the nth degree. And so what are they going to do to immigrants? They're going to use, more force than they should. I think, especially when the presidency and the DOJ and everyone in the federal government is kind of letting them have carte blanche to do what they want. So it's a mistake. It's too much government. And what's going to happen? The pendulum is going to swing the other way. In fact, I read a conspiracy that the government is doing this on purpose so that the pendulum will swing the other way and everyone will be way more acceptable to open borders after, all of the brutality that we're doing now.
Why would the government want that, though?
Well, the one government unit party.
Oh, that's what you mean. You don't mean Trump's government. You mean the...
Well, okay, I do mean that, like, everything Trump's doing is just to get the pendulum swing the other way and everyone would be okay with it. So, like, Biden did a lot of crazy stuff and no one was okay with it. And now Trump's going so far in the other direction that a lot of people moderates would take open borders to this.
Yeah, I think that's something we talked about in Trump's presidency, especially during the first 3 months. We looked at the first 100 days. I think we overall gave him pretty good grades outside the Epstein files for it. And our fear was, how far will he go, right? There needed to be a self-correction because the Biden administration was just top 5 worst presidencies of all time. Just absolutely disgusting, horrible presidency and embarrassing for our country. And now Trump, we were hoping like when he went right, he would bring us back to the middle. And it seems like we've already passed the middle. And now we're going into like, oh, is this now absolutely horrible? I think when it comes to the killing there in Minnesota, what that protester did was wrong, but the response wasn't right.
Yeah, agree with both.
And I think that's the middle ground. I think that is objectively the right thing. People say, "Oh, she can do whatever she wants." No, you can't like strike a person with your call, intentionally or not. Like, like you just can't. But like, did she have to get shot? No.
Yeah. Did she deserve a double tap for that?
Exactly. Was she really going to make it far after she struck him? They had the license plate. They were going to chase her down no matter what and arrest her, right? It's just, and looking at the video,
and it's not like she was going 60 miles an hour striking him. Like,
sure, yeah,
it was 5 miles an hour. He could have gotten out of the way easily.
And even if he didn't, because he wasn't expecting it, he gets clipped. He falls to the ground. There's people there. They shoot at her tires, and one of them hops in a car, chases her down, arrests her. They have a license plate. She's going to jail for a long time for, essentially running over or hitting. I think they're federal agents. I think they're federally protected. But no, killing is not the right response. And CK, you remember, we were like big fans of ICE when it first started. And then we were like, the biggest thing, our biggest worry is if they start killing people. Yep. And then our opinions are going to change. You'll talk to some people like, oh man, you're just flip-flopping on ideas and whatnot. Like, no. When new information happens, when new things happen, you have to take in all the information to make the right decision or to have the right thought process. And so I am not okay with killing Americans in any capacity at all. And to your point,
self-defense, right?
It probably has to be a training thing, right? And it has to be what is our objective? Who are we going after right now?
Yeah. So everyone, police force, military, ICE, right? They're a compromise of people. People are not perfect. Sure, so when I want someone to be perfect, it's not going to happen. So I have to make my rules for law enforcement in general. You can either err on the side of getting the bad guy, or you can err on the side of caution. And I don't think it works. You are a police state. You are like the authoritarian when you err on the side of like arrest first, ask questions later, or shoot first, ask questions later. And even arrest first, not as bad as shooting, because arresting is not finite.
Sure,
shooting is finite. It's over. There's no going back from that mistake. And you have to be a police force, even if crime is bad, that errs on the side of not killing someone that deserves to be killed. Maybe
you're supposed to be better. You're supposed to be the best.
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't lower yourself or your standards to the worst that our country has.
Yeah, and again, maybe there is if there is I think there's been a lot of police shootings that like the police actually thought his life was in danger, or actually was, and there's been riots over that. And I don't think that's right either. I think in a bang decision, it's hard to, who knows what you're going to do. You're going to protect yourself. You want to go home to your wife and kids. You don't want to leave your wife a widow. I get that. This 50-year-old liberal lady with, pink hair, driving her car 5 miles. There is no bang decision to be made. That's not the same scenario. And this is just straight up, you're not trained well, and you join this MAGA police force to do exactly that, and you get a little gung-ho with your gun.
Yep, yeah. And there's another thing, too, where I think he was struck over the summer by another car. I think it was July, and so they're saying, oh, yeah, he didn't, and they're almost like, oh, it's PTSD that I responded. Like, when it comes into the training process procedures, it's when you grow an organization so quickly, you don't have the proper process and procedures and policies to hold everybody accountable, to do the training, to wear just a damn uniform. I have conversations too, like, oh, what if an ICE agent came up to you and like they just look like they went to Walmart to buy all their shit or off Amazon, and they just get a little like Velcro ICE or police patch and just throw it on there. It's like, how do you identify? I'm not just going to listen to some rando cosplayer that's just putting on the uniform. Now, all this to say, to the right side of our podcast that listens to this, immigration is still an issue in the United States. Trump on the border has done a phenomenal job from, again, everything I've seen and read so far. But now, as we take it to the next steps where it's launching agents into our cities, it's like, how are we going to do this? Hey, you remember when we talked about the National Guard being deployed to like DC to help clean it all up? And we said, hey, this is a great idea until they kill somebody. And they didn't. And actually 2 got killed themselves, which is terrible. But the reason why people weren't protesting or on the national news as a terrible idea is because they didn't kill people, and that is just so important. You cannot be a government that kills its citizens.
Yep. Agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. All right. We are almost at that hour mark. Thank you so much for listening to those that have made it to this point. You either love everything we have to say or you hate us so much and you just have to listen to get ammo for your daily conversations that you have. BG, give me your closing comments for the day.
Closing comments. MRCK, thanks again. Hope we have a great football weekend. Fed chairman being indicted on some relatively crazy indictments from the DOJ. I'll leave it at that. We don't know who he's going to nominate for the new Fed chair. I hope it's not the guy from Blackstone or BlackRock. Crazy. That's complete. That's where I'm at.
That would be horrible. Oh, you know what we have to talk about next episode is didn't Trump just sign something where like BlackRock can't own single family homes?
Yeah, he signed multiple executive orders these last week, roughly week and a half. He did that.
That seems
he was
pretty
trying
awesome,
to take
right?
on,
Like the headline seemed like it was pretty great.
No,
Did it actually happen?
We'll see. First, we don't know if he has the constitutional authority to do so. Second, when I looked at the basics of how much institutional investors own single-family homes, they made up less than 2 to 3% of the entirety of the market. Which
there's no way that's true.
Which effectively, no, really, it's because there are way more private owners that are small business owners own majority of the single-family homes for rental income. BlackRock and these other institutional investors prefer to own multifamily or apartment buildings. So that's really the really big difference. So in terms of supply and demand, it wouldn't have that significant an impact, I don't think, unless they write the executive order broadly enough to cover even small investment institutional funds, which I don't think they will. Almost private equity-esque. The other thing was he's trying to take on credit card companies for interest rates, which gets in a whole litany of other problems because credit card companies and banks try to attribute specific rates based on risk of default, not necessarily just blanket rates. So, yeah, there's a lot that we could go a whole pod on just economics stuff.
We probably should at some point, though. We probably should. Now, I appreciate that. CK, closing comments. Go for it.
Bear down. Rams are going to come into the tundra. Puka's going to get frostbite. Stafford is going to be a little baby in his scuba suit. And Bears by a billion.
Hey, you can dream, can't you? There's no shot, man. No shot. Bears by a billion. Maybe by like a field goal last second. I'll give you that. But everyone, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Daily Turnip. We appreciate it immensely. I think we had over 250 views on our last episode. Honestly, anytime we get over 100, it is just a great feeling. So shout out to the parents and the family that listen to this. We know you carry this episode, and we appreciate that immensely. Until next time, our friends or my friends or whatever, we hope you have a great weekend and watch some football.